Hey folks, before I get fully into this week's video, I want to give a shout out to Greater New York Academy. I hope you all continue to work hard as your exam day approaches. And I also hope that you greatly appreciate and cherish your teacher, Mrs. Elliott. She cares about you deeply and she's working incredibly hard to make sure that you are all prepared. I also want to take a moment to tell everybody watching about an app called Revyze. It's a new app that's designed to help students to study for their standardized tests by blending engaging short-form videos with educational content. Picture an educational TikTok without the meaningless rabbit holes you often find yourself going down. In this app, you'll find fun short videos and interactive quizzes that are meant to help you improve your exam scores with as little as 10 minutes a day worth of practice. Revyze is also a supporting community where learning feels like studying with friends. The platform hosts thousands of free videos from 30 seconds to 3 minutes long, and they cover digital SAT testing, college admissions advice, and AP exams. You can find the app in your local app store, and you can check it out at the link in the description right below. Now, if this is your first time watching a Garden of English video, I'm Tim Freitas. I run this channel, I write textbooks, and I teach full-time at a Christian school. Currently, I'm instructing AP Lang, AP Lit, Speech, and Faith and Reason. That's a theology course. Of course, you may not care about my employment status, my work history, or my current course load, but I assure you it's important. And that's because today I'm going to provide you with some tips about using faith-based examples in any academic writing that you can do, especially for your argument response on your AP Lang exam. When I'm perusing AP-based social media sites, not only do I see people consistently asking if it's proper to use faith-based examples, but because I work at a Christian school, my students also ask me about how to properly include faith-based examples when responding to argument prompts. Now, if you've made it this far in the video, you may be thinking that it is only for students who identify in some way with the Christian religious tradition. And though I'll readily admit I'm going to use predominantly Judeo-Christian examples because that's what I have access to, the tips I'm about to provide are applicable for any faith tradition, whether you want to pull from the Quran, the Hadith, the Vedas, the Buddhist canons, or your own other faith-based experiences. So let's get into my tips. The first tip I have for you in regard to using faith-based examples is to recognize that the point of writing an argument on the AP exam is to write a solid argument. The point is not to proselytize. I'm not saying that living out your faith convictions in all that you do is not important. Doing so is incredibly valuable. But what I am saying is that the 2 to 4 minutes that your reader spends evaluating your paper will most likely not lead to his or her conversion. Your reader's main focuses are evaluating how your evidence relates to your overarching argument and evaluating how thoroughly you explain the relationship between your evidence and the argument at hand. Thus, you need to focus on the argument task.
You stay focused.
I bring this up as my first point because I can't tell you how many times students have substituted the argument for preaching. And even if the evidence the student is providing could be appropriately tied to the argument task that's offered in the prompt, the student typically substitutes the academic task for a different one, and this almost always hurts the score. And this observation actually leads me to tip 2. If you are sure that you want to use faith-based evidence in response to a prompt, you want to make sure that the evidence you'd like to use actually fits the task at hand, not just tangentially. The relationship between your evidence and the argument task needs to be clearer than Caribbean water. Over the years, there have been plenty of prompts that have lent themselves quite well to using faith-based examples. There's the 2009 Adversity and Character prompt, the 2012 Certainty and Doubt prompt, the 2013 Ownership and Sense of Self prompt, the 2016 Disobedience as a Virtue prompt, the 2018 Exploring the Unknown prompt, and the 2023 Persuasion Through Fear and Community Voices prompts. There are some other prompts where, if you were careful, you could use faith-based evidence, but such evidence would most likely be strained. These prompts would include the 2005 Singer Solution to World Poverty prompt, the Charitable Incentives prompt from 2007, the Role of the Humorist prompt from 2010, the Polite Speech prompt from 2015, and the Striving for Perfection prompt from 2021. But we also have to recognize there are other prompts where faith-based evidence probably wouldn't work at all. Prompts like these would include the 2007 Muckraker prompt, the 2008 Corporate Sponsorship prompt, the 2010 Form B Buy Nothing Day prompt, and the 2014 Creativity Crisis prompt. I have a link to all of these prompts in the description right below this video. As you go to check that link out, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and the subscribe button so that we can get this content out to all the other people that are watching YouTube. You should also check out my Garden of English exam prep guide for AP Lang students that's linked down there. The guide covers everything you need to know to score well on your AP Lang exam and do well in your AP Lang class. Now, back to my tip. My advice to anyone considering using faith-based evidence is to only use it if the argument task easily allows for it. If you look at a prompt and an immediate faith-based example doesn't jump out to your mind, surprise! Don't push it. You absolutely do not want to attempt to force evidence to work when it doesn't. Now, on to tip 3. If you include faith-based evidence in your argument, you must recognize that not everyone believes what you believe. So you can do this in your writing in a couple different ways. I used to have an incredible student named Lexi Foster who would effectively use faith-based evidence and biblical examples in her argument essays all the time. Now, before she would start her papers though, she would include a note at the top that would read something like this. Note: in order to understand my following argument and line of reasoning, please realize that the author of this paper holds the biblical account to be considered truth. Now notice what she was doing here. She implicitly recognized that someone may disagree or disregard the validity of the evidence that she wanted to provide. So instead, she admitted her presuppositions and then correlated them with the line of reasoning she was about to produce. On exam day, AP readers are tasked with tracing the student's line of reasoning and explanations, not evaluating the validity of the student's evidence based on personal biases that the reader might hold. So, with a note like this to start the essay, my student projected the need to understand her line of reasoning was based on what she believes, not what the reader does. She scored just fine on both of her AP English exams, by the way. Now, a note like this is important because it means that though a reader may disagree with the student, the reader should be able to overlook that disagreement to see if the argument itself is logical based on the student's presuppositions. Another way that students can address that the reader may hold different beliefs would be to include a line in the commentary that admits that not everyone believes in the validity of the evidence found in the paragraph that includes a faith-based example. Here's a quick template for a line that would admit something like this. It's about to pop up on your screen. Imagine someone wanted to write about the story of Adam and Eve for the Oscar Wilde Disobedience, Virtue, and Social Progress prompt from 2016. I'm about to show you an example thesis and body paragraph on the screen for you to consider. It is well developed, so the body paragraph is a bit long. You're absolutely going to want to pause the screen and read the whole thing because you really want to see this current tip in action. I'm also going to put this example in a document that you can access in the description down below the video. Okay, here's the model thesis and body paragraph. Notice the bolded lines. Contained therein is the admission that not everyone will agree with the truth of the story, but the writer still uses it anyway to prove the larger point of the paragraph and the thesis for the argument. History and stories alike consistently prove that human nature is hardly unblemished. The example paragraph you just read also leads directly into my 4th and 5th tips. The 4th tip is that if you're going to use faith-based examples, you must make sure that you thoroughly know the story that you want to use. You should notice that in my model, the story of Adam and Eve is detailed in 5 sentences that include precise verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. FYI, 5 sentences should be the max length for a detailed description example in one of your argument paragraphs. If you want to learn more about the rules for including examples in your arguments, see the video I made about such that has a thumbnail that looks like this. Of course, it can be found in the description below the video. Okay, my 5th tip is to always pair a faith-based example with at least one other one so that if your reader doesn't want to accept the validity of your faith-based evidence, he or she will not be able to deny how it relates to other examples that the reader might deem more valid. In the example paragraph that I showed you, you should notice how the Genesis account is related to universal explorations throughout the ages. Anyone can argue that any story is made up or embellished.
You lie!
But no one can deny that humans have been warning one another about being disobedient and overly curious ever since the dawn of the oral tradition.
Curious and curious.
And yet, humans still continue to push the boundaries of behavioral discovery, even though devastation seems to be the consistent outcome. If the essay were to continue, the second body paragraph would need to include an example that would be deemed less controversial. The paragraph could focus on the Russian Revolution and its detrimental effects that have lasted for decades. Now, I want to provide you with one more example produced by my student Annika, who included faith-based examples in response to the 2018 Exploring the Unknown prompt. Once this example pops up on your screen, I want you to pause it, and as you read her thesis and final body paragraph from her essay, I need you to focus on how she includes faith-based examples with other examples, but does so a little bit differently than I just suggested. I want you to pause and check it out here. Wow, that is a solid paragraph modeling another way to include faith-based examples. This time, they're more anecdotal faith-based examples. Now, how would you describe what Annika did in this paragraph? Try to explain it to me and the steps that she took by breaking them down and putting that explanation in the comments below. Then, I want you to go check out my advice for using personal stories and fiction examples in your argument papers. These videos are about to pop right up on your screen.